long before the Pilgrims landed at Plymouth Rock, long before the Virginia settlements. Footsteps from the Old World were forever changing the American Southwest. Spanish padres arrived in the 1500s, bringing their faith to native peoples who lived along the Rio Grande near present-day El Paso, Texas. Spanish traditions and native cultures combined, building a new way of life and the first mission trail in America. Today, the spirit of those ancestors lives on, welcoming everyone to El Paso's Mission Valley. This is the spirit of El Paso's Mission Trail. Spring, 1598. Spanish colonizer Don Juan de Onate crosses the Rio Grande and claims all land to its north for the King of Spain. Onate names the crossing El Paso del Rio del Norte, the historic place that is today El Paso, Texas. Onate is leading a caravan of settlers, soldiers, and priests to the colony of New Spain in what is now New Mexico.
Gracias a Dios.
The colonists hold a great feast with native Indians near present-day San Elizario, Texas. Together, they make history and celebrate the first Thanksgiving in North America, 23 years before the Pilgrims land in Massachusetts. By 1680, there was unrest among the Pueblo Indians of New Spain. The bloody Pueblo revolt drove the Spaniards south, down the Rio Grande, to El Paso. Indians who came with them were settled nearby. Under Spanish supervision, Indians built the churches that still stand along El Paso's historic Mission Trail. The first stop on El Paso's Mission Trail is the Isleta Mission and the oldest community in Texas. When Tigua Indians settled the area in 1682, they built the Isleta Pueblo for shelter and the Isleta Mission for prayer. A statue of the Tigua's patron, St. Anthony, stands above the door. Over the centuries, the Isleta Mission has been damaged by floods and fire, but early construction is still part of the mission where Tigua Indians worship today. All of El Paso's missions are sacred ground, parish churches that still serve their communities. El Paso's Mission Trail is the country's oldest mission trail. The Socorro Mission, built by Pueblo Indians, was settled soon after Isleta. Today, volunteers help to restore the Socorro Mission. They make new adobe bricks in the ancient way, replacing 20th century repairs that did more harm than good. San Elizario was founded in 1789 as a Spanish presidio, or fort. Soldiers were stationed there to protect the region from Apache Indian attacks. Today, tourists can visit the Presidio Chapel, a place to pray or take in cultural events, like this performance by the El Paso Opera. San Elizario is also the Mission Trail's connection to Billy the Kid. The Kid freed a friend from the old jail there, making it the only jail Billy ever broke into. A historical footnote: the missions at Isleta and Socorro and the San Elizario Presidio were originally built south of the Rio Grande River. Over the years, the river found new channels. Now all three are north of the river in Texas. A short trip across the international border and the Zaragoza Bridge takes visitors to the oldest mission in the region. The mission of Our Lady of Guadalupe was built in 1659 by native Indians. Today it is surrounded by the modern city of Juarez, Mexico. But centuries ago, the missions were the centers of thriving farming communities. Indian laborers dug acequias, or irrigation canals, that turned the desert into fertile farmland. Today, ancient acequias still bring river water to the fields of the Mission Valley, where corn, peppers, and cotton grow in the rich soil. A blend of Indian, Spanish, Mexican, and Texan traditions bring a great mix of activities to El Paso's Mission Valley. At the Licon Dairy, cheese is made much as it was centuries ago. The special cheese is made fresh daily in the Mission Valley. At the Tigua Cultural Center, visitors watch tribal members bake bread in ovens called hornos. Young Tiguas perform traditional Indian dances and invite visitors to join them. Learn more about Tigua history in the Tribal Museum. Experience the colorful Mexican tradition called La Charreada. All the excitement of a rodeo mixed with mariachi music. There's a year-round schedule of festivals and fairs on El Paso's Mission Trail. Each spring, the El Paso Heritage Festival celebrates the Mission Trail's history and culture with food, historical presentations, traditional dancing, and gunfighter reenactments. In June, the Tigua Indians celebrate the festival of their patron, St. Anthony. Summer brings out the chili roasts and craft fairs. Plus dancing and bands and night spots along El Paso's Mission Trail. At Christmas time, traditional luminarias light the Mission Trail. Local groups reenact La Posada, the Mexican story of Mary and Joseph's search for shelter before the birth of Jesus. There's plenty of wildlife along the Mission Trail. Nature lovers feel right at home at Feather Lake and the Rio Bosque. They preserve ancient river wetlands or bosques as they were centuries ago. Bird watchers count the species that gather along the Rio Grande, and migrating fowl use the river as a north-south corridor. Each year, visitors from around the world experience the history, heritage, and spirit of El Paso's Mission Trail. Let the spirit of El Paso's Mission Trail come to life for you. This old trail in the New Mexico desert is all that's left here of the Spanish King's Royal Highway, the first Camino Real in America, forged across the desolate landscape centuries ago. The rugged trail is a remnant of El Camino Real de Tierra Adentro, the oldest and longest roadway in the Americas. In 1598, following ancient Native American footpaths, Spanish colonists, led by the Conquistador Don Juan de Onate, entered what is today the American Southwest. As the Onate expedition followed the river north, it provided fresh water, wildlife, and firewood. It was an arduous task traveling with 80 carretas, or ox carts, piled high with supplies. Carts and wagons could not pass where the river had settled against a mountain range, forming canyons and creating miles of uneven arroyos. So, the Spanish expedition took a risky alternate route here, near modern-day Fort Selden, New Mexico.
Entering New Mexico, the trail followed the Rio Grande north, establishing a paraje or a campsite about every day of travel. This is the Paraje Robledo, and this is where they built Fort Selden in the later days of the trail to protect the travelers and the caravans through the Jornada de Muerto.
Onate was leading subjects of King Felipe II of Spain north from Mexico City to establish a new Mexico. The crown wanted to expand Spain's territory and lay claim to vast areas of land. They planned to populate remote regions along the Rio Grande with Spanish settlers. Onate's caravan included soldier farmers and their families, servants, slaves, and laborers. About 500 people in all. Catholic priests of the Franciscan order came to convert and organize the native population. Their mission was to Christianize the Indians and make them productive workers, growing crops and producing goods for the colony and New Spain. Onate's 1598 expedition into Spain's northern territory was the first organized conquest of land in today's American Southwest, years before the English settlers arrived at Jamestown, Virginia, or the Pilgrims landed at Plymouth Rock. The trail they opened across the desert and along the Rio Grande was the lifeline of the Spanish colonial system for hundreds of years. It was later used by Mexican travelers, American stagecoach lines, railroads, and today, modern highways, like Interstate 25 here in southern New Mexico.
El Camino Real, the Royal Road, was the main highway into and out of New Mexico for over 300 years. This is the beginning of the famed and waterless Jornada de Muerto.
This desert segment of El Camino Real is abandoned now and almost forgotten. But the road's influence on the landscape, history, and culture of the Southwest is immeasurable. Once the northbound travelers on El Camino Real managed to get past the 90 miles of the Jornada del Muerto without water, they then encountered some very steep hills and difficult terrain in the Socorro, New Mexico area. This is the Black Mesa, a landmark on El Camino Real that caravans had to go around to get to the Rio Grande. Another trail obstacle near Socorro was Parita Hill. Oxen had to be double-teamed to get the carretas up this hill. After that, the next and last major problem going north was Bajada Hill, a winding road that took the caravans up to the plain where Santa Fe is located. From that hill, it was another 12 or so miles to Santa Fe, capital of New Mexico. It was originally established in 1610 by Spanish Governor General Don Pedro de Peralta.
Once the Onate expedition arrived in the far north, the intent was to establish an entirely new colony in the New World. The Pueblo people became subjects of the Spanish king, like it or not, and the soldiers and the priests forced these local people into an unfamiliar colonial system of labor.
That often resulted in violence. The Spanish, with their superior iron armor and guns, were almost always victorious over the Pueblo Indians and their clubs, bows, and arrows. The Spanish established new institutions with the colonization of the North. Caravans of goods and supplies began making the 3-month trek between Mexico City and Santa Fe to supply remote missions and outposts. Tools and manufactured goods were carried north, and animal hides and raw materials were carried south. The Spanish colonial system in New Mexico was stable for 8 decades until the Pueblo Indians revolted in August of 1680. Many Spaniards were killed, and 2,000 survivors fled New Mexico, escaping south on the Camino Real to Nuestra Señora de Guadalupe Mission in El Paso del Norte. The Guadalupe Mission, founded in 1659, was overwhelmed by the refugees, so new settlements were established downriver in what is now El Paso's lower valley. Tigua Indians were resettled at the Isleta Mission. Piro and Tompiro Indians were placed at Mission Sinicu and Mission Socorro, and a new mission of colonial government was established at San Lorenzo. The Isleta Mission, established in 1682, is the oldest continuously operating Catholic church in Texas. Onate crossed the Rio Grande at a site near downtown El Paso. It is commemorated by several historical markers. The actual crossing is now fenced off by the border wall. From there, the Royal Road wound through El Paso Canyon and followed the Rio Grande north.
El Camino Real de Tierra Adentro was part of Spain's intercontinental network of land and maritime routes throughout North and South America. This first major road from the southern part of Mexico to the far northern portion of the frontier covers more than 1,600 miles.
About 400 miles of El Camino Real pass through the United States and have been designated as a National Historic Trail. Most of the original trail lies within Mexico. Some sites and cities along the Mexican section were declared a World Heritage Site by UNESCO in 2010. Many trail segments have become major modern highways in Mexico and the United States.
CARTA is an acronym for the El Camino Real de Tierra Adentro Trail Association. Our job is to inform and educate the public about the history and the stories of the trail and how it contributed to the development of our region. We're very proud of our history in New Mexico, and if you'd like to join us, here's the way to do it.
The first Camino Real in America shaped the landscape, culture, economy, and history of today's American Southwest. Its importance cannot be overstated. Perhaps the most significant early road in North America, El Camino Real de Tierra Adentro remains a living, thriving trail, still shaping the region's landscape and culture.
This is San Elizario, an historic village built around a 400-year tradition of religion, adobe architecture, and a blend of Mexican and Native American cultures. San Eli is just outside El Paso, Texas, near the U.S. border with Mexico. It is the birthplace of adobe architecture in the United States. Gaspar Enriquez, artist in residence in San Eli and adobe artisan, explains how the adobe tradition began here on El Paso's Mission Trail.
Actually, it started here in the El Paso region, and San Elizario would be the El Paso region. And it started from here and then went to Omecia and then followed the Camino Real Trail all the way to Santa Fe.
For those who don't know what it is, adobe is a mixture of the main building material once available in this area: 80% clay, 20% sand, straw, and horse manure. The mixture is formed into huge bricks and dried by another resource plentiful in the desert Southwest, the sun.
Well, actually, I saw the potential a long time ago of the architecture. I fell in love with the architecture. I studied adobe building and the structure of the old the people that used to do the adobe. And so I fell in love with it, and you know, the love of it, you have to stay here. And I've thought of going to some other places, but this is the place for me.
San Eli, where the adobe tradition was born in the United States, is a treasured part of El Paso's historic Mission Trail. San Eli is home of the 215-year-old Presidio Chapel San Elizario. The central town square is the focal point of this small community, formed by the chapel, the Portales Museum, and the Adobe Horseshoe Theater, while the surrounding area features acres of green space and adobe buildings that are hundreds of years old. Some of these buildings are restored, some are in the process of being restored. San Eli is also the site of the first Thanksgiving in North America, celebrated in 1598, 23 years before the Pilgrims landed at Plymouth Rock.
Gracias a Dios.
This is where Spanish explorers and settlers from Mexico gave thanks after surviving a grueling journey north out of Mexico and across the Chihuahuan Desert without water. Today, about 15,000 people call San Elizario home. County Commissioner Miguel Terán explains some of San Eli's charm.
I think that, number one, it is the most historically significant section of the county, period. This is the roots of El Paso County. In fact, it's probably the closest community that resembles the old Mayan culture, the Sinacantecos.
For the past 40 years, this small historic town has been home to nationally acclaimed Chicano artist Gaspar Enriquez, well known for his airbrushed, ultra-realistic imagery portraying people of the El Paso region. Is this the First Communion?
First Communion, but it's in Spanish, Primera Comunión. And this is one of my pieces, and it's all airbrush. This one right here is an altarpiece, and what it is a kind of a reference to the senseless violence of teenagers. And the title of this one is Proscrita, and translation will be outcast. So the little girl's an outcast.
Becky Duval-Reese is the director of the El Paso Museum of Art and is very familiar with the work of Gaspar Enriquez.
Gaspar is one of the most original artists that I have seen in my career.
Several of Gaspar Enriquez's works are part of the permanent collection at the El Paso Museum of Art.
He has a national reputation. Certainly he's in collections like Cheech Marine's Chicano collection. He increasingly is collected by major museums across the country. I think Gaspar truly is one of the most original artists at work today in the country. He's very creative. He brings an intelligence and a real heart to the work that he produces.
Gaspar's studio space is part of his home, a 250-year-old adobe in San Elizario. Earlier, we described Gaspar Enriquez as an artist and an adobe artisan. With his own hands, Enriquez added the beautiful high-ceilinged studio space to the original part of his home, and he works from this studio today.
I think the preservation of the architecture, the integrity of the architecture is to be preserved, and to be preserved in the community. And that's very important. But to me, it's adobe is a structure that you feel very comfortable with. That's why I'm here.
Increasingly, adobe structures tug at the hearts of many. Up the road from Gaspar, the restoration project of the Socorro Mission is underway. It is a daunting task. Fortunately, this mission is in the capable hands of the experts from Cornerstone's community projects, like Jean Fulton, who is pouring her heart into this project.
I'm a Virginia transplant, I guess I should say. So when I came out, the Forest Service brought me out. I fell in love with adobe, the way the light hits it, the way that you can walk into this particular building. It's like a cave. These walls are 5 feet thick. You just don't see it everywhere.
Part of Jean's work involves coordinating volunteers to make adobe bricks and restore old adobe structures.
But you just get a wooden form, you make sure that your soil mix is right, you do a few tests beforehand to make sure, get your recipe down, punch it down, that's what the little kids are really good at, lift it up. After a week or two you can set it on edge, and depending on what time of year it is, a little more time you can stack it and you've got your brick. We've made 20,000 of these on site, with a lot of help from different people.
Understanding the earthy pull of adobe and the play of light on the beautiful finished product, there is something magical about bringing artists and an artist community into the adobes of San Elizario. And for those who love adobe, there are properties waiting for renovation and expansion all along El Paso's Mission Trail. Would it be attractive to you if there were other artists working in this area?
It would be a very nice environment if we had some artists, make it an art community and make it receptive to people coming in and working with the arts.
Enriquez is involved in restoring another adobe in the Santa Eli Central Square area and hopes that other artists might see the potential here and begin developing their own properties, not as an echo of Santa Fe, but rather in honor of the birthplace of adobe architecture in the United States. This is one of the most magnificent adobe properties available in San Elizario. It's the Adobe Horseshoe Dinner Theater. These doors leading into the Adobe Horseshoe have a great story. They were smuggled out of Mexico in full view as the handmade sides of a truck that was filled with clay pots. The Adobe Horseshoe Dinner Theater could be rejuvenated as a dinner theater, or as an art gallery, or perhaps as the tasting room of a new vineyard here in Santa Eli.
Naturally, this is also the first setting of the grape winemakers of the area. Laid out their grapes along the Socorro Road here. And this is what happened back in the early part of the 17th, 18th century.
With its rural setting, southwest climate, adobe charm, historic relevance, and closeness to a major metropolitan center, San Elizario is poised as a near-perfect location for development as an arts community. San Eli, where the adobe tradition was born in the United States, is a treasured part of El Paso's historic Mission Trail. If you would be interested in more information about San Elizario, please contact the El Paso Mission Trail Association at 915-534-0630.